Nexxlegacy.
Mr. Heller on the Outlaw Culture Radio right about now. Mr. Heller, how are you?
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm blessed. I'm glad you're here on a Friday night. I'm pretty sure where you are it's raining like it is out here in Northern California, right?
Yeah, it's starting to drizzle, but it's real cold down here. I just got back from several weeks in Miami and South Beach. I went down there for my birthday, and it was really beautiful down there. I just love it in South Florida.
Happy belated birthday.
Oh, thanks, man.
Happy belated birthday. Well, I'm glad you're back here, and I'm glad you're hanging out with us on this Culture Radio show. And it's been a minute since we've actually had a chance to talk live on the air, but basically from the lines that's continuing to be lit. And one time, there was one thing I didn't do last time I actually interviewed was actually get a chance to let some of the fans and the people that was real big fans of NWA speak. So I'm gonna give them a chance to be able to do that tonight. But before I even do that, I know we went over so much NWA stuff before, and I know it's already ingrained in history, but it was one thing I definitely needed to say. I mean, basically, you are and you will continue to have that legacy of what was created, and I feel like if it wasn't for you and all parties involved, hip-hop probably would have been at a standstill back then. So I want to personally, on the air with all these thousands and thousands of listeners, to say thank you for your contributions in this music industry.
Yeah, it's much appreciated, man. But the little guy that lived next door to me down here in Calabasas that isn't with us anymore, I mean, he was really the visionary that inspired me to and pushed me to take Ruthless and NWA to the limits that they reached.
And to me, I always feel like, especially for me personally, I mean, I'm in my 30s, so I've always was that type of person that wanted to at least embrace what hip hop meant, not just to me, I mean, and not just to what kind of music was being put out, but just for the reality of it and the passion that people actually gave and put out and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure you can attest to it too, Mr. Heller, that that's what they gave when they came and approached you with everything that what they started and how that journey went, right? The hunger that they wanted at that time.
The thing that amazes me the most is that generation that's out there. For a while, I would run into people between their 30s and 40s, people your age, that could tell me exactly where they were and what they were doing the first time they heard Boys in the Hood or Straight Outta Compton or Fuck the Police or Dope Man. But now I find that demographic is even expanding, and I run into kids now that are 17, 18, 19 years old that are just huge NWA fans that really feel the legacy of NWA and the late 80s.
And I think too, Mr. Heller, and we're here live on Outlaw Culture Radio with Jerry Heller, that I think personally, to me, when it comes to legacy and the legacy that was left when it comes, especially with music, because music, as we know, we're going to get into just some of the current state and, the problems that I feel like we're having now. Like, I always feel if people will remember, like you said, the date, the time, where you were, what you had on, what you were eating when you were listening to those songs you said, that will always be remembered. And just for the simple fact that you mentioned that there's 17, 18-year-olds that embraced it and will continue to embrace it, to me, I think that's what defines the legacy, right?
Yeah, I think that the impact you have on people certainly is one of the important facets of a legacy that just will never be erased by the passage of time.
And that's what, to me, I feel that we're lacking right now when it comes to the music industry. And I'm just going to keep it 110%, Mr. Heller, that it's a problem right now when it comes to just the current state of hip hop, because I'm looking and I'm trying to give every single thing out there a chance as far as an open ear. And I respect everybody trying to get money at the end of the day, and I understand that people, they have their own particular mission, and my mission doesn't have to be just like theirs. But when it comes to just the core hip-hop values that's lacking right now, I mean, what's your opinion on just hip-hop in general right now?
First of all, from now on, why don't you just call me Jerry? We're old friends already, you know. So we've talked several times. So let's just keep it a little more casual. But
you got it.
I think that what's happened is, when we started NWA and when we started Ruthless Records, the business model. Of course, we didn't even know what a business model was at that time, but the business model called for a very, very minor investment of money into making music. And when you had guys that were making records in their mother's garages with, those little Casios that you could buy at Toys R Us.
Right.
It just got to the point where, actually the tape would cost more than the studio investment itself. So when if you did something that you didn't like, you just erased it and just recorded over it. So when you're doing something like that, I think that is part of what I call the economic integrity of hip hop and of gangster rap. That's part of the culture, part of that business model, if you will. And when you start having a Snoop Dogg record that costs as much as a Whitney Houston record or a Mary J. Blige record, and a video that costs more than Dennis Hopper and Jack Nicholson spent on the whole movie of Easy Rider, I think that defeats, what I felt was not only the economic integrity, but the purity and street and realness, rawness of gangster rap in 1987.
Because if memory serves me correct, I don't think there was an NWA video that was a super big budget video, right? It was pretty much just straight to the point, right?
Yeah, most of the videos we did were basically low budget videos. We did do one video, I think it was for We Want Easy, that Robert Townsend produced and directed with a guy named Kevin Swain, that maybe cost $100,000, which was a sizable investment at that time. But most of our videos were down, in the $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 range. And one of the most important things in that established the credibility of NWA was when MTV came out and banned Straight Outta Compton. I think we probably sold 500,000 records the next day. So, and those were the days when MTV wasn't, talking about Kim Kardashian and and
they were more or less still trying to find their way when it comes to hip hop.
Yeah, it was music television, and it was meaningful and it meant something. But when they banned Straight Outta Compton, that was a meaningful milestone, and we were so proud of that they would ban our video. That it was really something for everyone at Ruthless Records.
And I feel like you can ban it, but you can't stop the words that was actually being put out. So it got everybody curious, more or less, to literally see exactly what was going on, not just on this side of the coast, but also in every other ghetto and every other hood. Doesn't matter if you were in the suburbs or anything like that. The curiosity just kind of got to the point where it overflowed, and basically there was that era, that phenomenon that just kind of touched bases on everybody's lives. And one of the things I want to ask you too is because I feel like when it comes to your knowledge in this business. I mean, you know, you're ranked right up there with everybody else that's been in, not just from the years that you've actually done this, Jerry, but just also just, you know, all the time, the effort, the highs, the lows, everything in the middle. Why do you feel like, or why is it, well, this is just my opinion, but why do you or anybody else feel like, you know, especially the record labels nowadays, and, you know, a lot of people will blame the internet, or a lot of people will blame the illegal downloads. I know that's part of it, but why do you feel, or why is it the assumption that people will think that, you know, the record labels itself are literally becoming extinct?
I think that the record labels are responsible themselves for that problem. I think that they became infatuated with this 1898 purchase price of a CD.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you have a record, a CD that costs that much money, and a young person, someone 8, 9, 10 years old, has to, you know, save up their allowance for 6 weeks to buy a record, that record better be a real good record. And
absolutely.
And the genre itself, I mean, look, rap music is rap music.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, it was people talking to beats, basically other people's beats, other people's music, like George Clinton, for example. And most of these rappers weren't really musicians. Besides the fact that Yola could play a little drums, I mean, nobody at Ruthless was really a musician. So put that along with the advent of the CD, because remember in those days it was cassettes. And, you know, a CD, the physical structure of a CD allowed you to put 19, 20, 21 songs on a CD where, you know, in the older days of the music business, you could only put 10, 11, 12 songs on vinyl and still keep the fidelity. When fidelity means something, I mean, now kids think it's great to listen to a record over their phones or iPods or something. I mean, you know, in those days, I mean, the fidelity and the quality of the music really meant something. So you bring all those factors together along with the greed of the major labels, and the fact that these are not basically musicians. So you have someone like that I consider one of the better of the young rappers. I mean, he's not that young anymore, but like Game, okay? So he comes along and he has a CD with 19 or 20 cuts on it, and only 2 of the cuts are really worthy of listening to, and he's one of the better of the younger rappers. And, you know, what kid in his right mind is going to pay $18.98 or even $15.98 or $12.98? So what are they going to do? Along comes Steve Jobs, you know, down just a little south of you guys down there in Silicon Valley, and he starts iTunes, and you can buy, you know, a CD, I mean, a single for 99 cents or $1.29 or I think it was 99 in those days. And it sort of takes the fun out of listening to a story. Now remember, the really great gangster rap groups, and to me there's only 2. Politically it was Public Enemy, sociologically it was NWA. So they had, I think that Straight Outta Compton had 19 cuts, okay? Of those 19 cuts, all 19 cuts were produced by Dr. Dre. Straight Outta Compton told a story. It had continuity. One song led into another song. One rap led into another rap. And the same thing with Public Enemy. Now, you know, as much as I love West Coast and I love NWA, you know, I got to feel that politically, you know, Public Enemy certainly was an important important factor. They just didn't have the advantage that Ruthless Records had. Ruthless Records had something that nobody else in the history of our hip-hop has ever had, and it's a guy named Andre Romel Young. And, when you have Dr. Dre producing every track that ever came out on your record label, and you have guys like Eazy-E and O'Shea Jackson and Yella and MC Ren doing the lyrics and rapping, plus with the political instability of that era, the time was just right to recreate what really was happening in San Francisco in the 60s. I mean, I'm a child of the 60s. I grew up with Jack Kennedy. I grew up with Teddy and Bobby Kennedy. I grew up with a president who was a crook, with an unpopular war in Vietnam. I mean, I grew up with, I'm not talking about the Kennedys, of course. I'm talking about Richard Nixon. But I grew up with an unpopular war in Vietnam, with the student radicals, Mario Salvo at the University of California at Berkeley, with the Weathermen, the SDS, the Diggers, and of course, you got to give credit where credit is due, and the influences in that era were the Rolling Stones and artists like Gil Scott-Heron and the Black Panthers.
Right.
So when you have those kind of influences recreated again by Public Enemy and NWA, a generation later, it just was, the time was right. Hip-hop has been there a long time. Hip-hop isn't just music.
Absolutely.
Hip-hop is graffiti art. Another San Francisco native, Jeffrey Chang, wrote a book called Can't Stop the Music, which I feel is the definitive. It's the definitive book on hip-hop. My book tells great stories, and it's great, and I love it, and I'm proud of it, and, it's a testament to Eric Wright. But, Jeffrey Chang, I teach college at UCLA, and I teach a couple of courses. I teach the Hip Hop Nation from Kingston to Compton. I teach the History of Rock and Roll at UCLA, and I use Jeffrey Chang's book as a textbook, along with Don Passman's book, All You Need to Know About the Music Business, and my book, Ruthless. But those are all, this guy, Jeff Chang, he really lays it out all the way back to, the graffiti artists, Jean-Paul Basquiat and Keith Haring, and, the graffiti artist, and then goes to Cool Herc coming from Jamaica, and, and the movement in Queens. And, I was there for that, although I never could really get into East Coast rap, because being an old rock and roller, look, I was involved with the Grassroots and the Guess Who and Elton John and Pink Floyd and Journey, another San Francisco group, Lee Michaels, guys like that were very melodic. Okay, to me, the music coming out of Hollis, Queens was not musical. And then I hear what's happening at this little pressing plant down in Old Hollywood called McCullough Records, and the people that were pressing there, Ice-T, the L.A. Dream Team, the World Class Wrecking Crew, Egyptian Lover, Bobby Jimmy and the Critters, Timex Social Club, who were, of course, that's Jay King from San Francisco again. But I hear all these guys that are pressing down at McCullough Records, and these are all basically very melodic kind of music. When you listen to the early rap of West Coast rap from here, Rockberry Jam, In the House, by the L.A. Dream Team, Timex Social Club, Rumors, Bobby Jimmy and the Critters. When you hear Egyptian Lover, Egypt with Rodney O and Joe Cooley, when you hear these records, and then you got the World Class Wrecking Crew. And Alonzo Williams, who is the founder of the World Class Wrecking Crew, I always say that the World Class Wrecking Crew were the Temptations of rap music. They were choreographed, and they dressed, and they wore glitter and makeup, and they were cool, and they were the Temptations of rap. And, when you listen to that, it's melodic. There's melody there, and that's something that I can relate to, beside the fact that I represented Emmett Grogan of the Diggers in San Francisco.
Right.
I interacted with Huey Newton and the Panthers, because in those days, music and the political movements and the drug culture, and a guy in San Francisco who I think probably is one of the 4 or 5 most important guys in the history of the music business, Bill Graham, who died tragically in a helicopter crash coming from Concord. I was able to relate to that. It was the one time in my life when being a little older than everyone else made it that much easier for me.
And Jerry, you know why that is, I feel, and this is Jerry Heller here on Outlaw Culture Radio, and to me, I feel everything you're mentioning, I mean, that's a lot of it is not just grassroots of just the core values that I always talk about hip-hop, because the memories that, every single person more or less that you've spouted off right now within the last 5 minutes just kind of took me back, just kind of like to the essence of, to me, I feel like what music really was and should be and what it is right now. And to me, it's like everything that you said. You had the entire NWA album production by Dre. You have nowadays, it's like so many hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. There's so many producers on an album. It just doesn't feel, this is my opinion, it just doesn't feel like a homegrown album or an album that, certain people can relate to. And it could just be specifically, but there's so many. It's not as sacred. What you were talking about, Jerry, was what I always feel hip-hop should be. It should be sacred. If you have, when I say sacred, I'm talking about this is my gift to you, and I don't want people I don't know or don't respect or don't relate to actually just go ahead and just, okay, you can go ahead and breathe on my album just because you're hot right now. And to me, I don't think that's what hip-hop should be.
I agree with you 100% there. And I think what you lose when you have an album with 14 or 15 different producers on it, you lose the continuity, you lose the purity and the sanctity of the musical movement, the genre, as it were, because you just don't have the continuity and you don't tell a story. So, the songs don't flow into each other and tell a story, just like 100 Miles and Running or Effelversagen. They tell a story, and they keep you involved in that story from the first bar to the very end of the record. So I don't think that you have that anymore, and that's one of the reasons why, album sales these days, I mean, you take a big album and maybe it'll sell 10,000 CDs and do 1.5 million downloads and ringtones, and that's not what it was about. I'm going to digress a little, and I'm going to tell you a story because once again, reinforcing this point that you made, maybe I'm going to make it a little more eloquently for you. Okay?
Well, the year was
1966, and I hate to talk about how fucking old I am. But I was on the road with a young, in those days we called them black guys, man. It wasn't African Americans, okay? So I was on the road with this young black guy named Otis Redding, who was a little older than I was, and we were in Paris, and he was playing at the Olympia Theater, and I saw people in the audience going absolutely berserk. I mean, they were going crazy. And, we were backstage afterwards, and I said, whoa, Otis, great, man, that was unbelievable. What a show. He said, dig this, my brother. He says, those people don't speak English.
Right.
And I said to myself, whoa. I mean, I had this epiphany, man. I mean, go to a movie in French without subtitles and see how much you understand of it. Here's a guy singing to these people in a language that they don't understand, and they're getting off on it. So to me, music is the ultimate communication between people. And of course, after that, Otis, we came back, and in '67 we did Monterey down in at the Monterey Fairgrounds, just south of you guys. And now the two important festivals of my lifetime, of course, were Monterey and Woodstock. Okay?
Right.
And they were important for two different reasons. Monterey, first of all, Woodstock, you're talking about 500,000 people, and you're talking about the greatest rock and roll acts in history. And that was the first time that rock and roll acts were able to relate, to have the youth of America relate to them, the counterculture relate to them, in a way that became meaningful both politically and sociologically. Now, we go to Monterey, okay? Now, I'm in Monterey, and you got Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, the Mamas and the Papas, Otis Redding. I mean, everybody in rock and roll was there. Joan Baez, I mean, all the folk rock protest singers, everybody. The most incredible thing, and I'm just going to digress once more. Woodstock made the rock and roll movement important worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
Monterey did something totally different. What Monterey did was show guys like Clive Davis, David Geffen, Mo Austin, Joe Smith, Bob Krasnow, Jack Holtzman, Jerry Heller. It showed us that not only was this a great socio-political movement, but it was business, man. And Bill Graham, who was the stage manager of the San Francisco Mime Troupe, Chet Helms, who ran the Avalon Ballroom, see, they were just hippies, man. We were hippies. Now guys like Clive Davis wearing fucking $1,000 suits and $800 pairs of shoes, okay? Could see what it was to get down with people like Janis Joplin and have it mean something business-wise. And the minute that guys like Clive Davis decided they wanted in, then it changed the face of rock and roll. Now, you want to know the most incredible thing about Monterey? And I was there, man. And I was at Woodstock. You want to know the most incredible thing about Monterey?
What was that?
There were 7,200 fucking people there, man. Not 500,000. There were 7,000 people in this little fucking fairgrounds, who didn't know what was going to happen, who came and saw The Who and Jimi Hendrix burn his guitar, man. 7,200 people. It was the shot heard round the world. It was the Boston Tea Party of the music business. So now we have, something totally different happening in America. And it all happened, on the West Coast in this little fairgrounds in Monterey, and back east on Max Yasker's farm in Woodstock. And on one coast it was 7,200 people, on the other coast it was 500,000 people. And that was really...
It's funny how, Jerry, life changes. It doesn't matter how many people, like you said. It could be 7,200 or it can be 500,000 in different locations, different coasts. That effect or how things were, just, like you said, it's a life changer. And I heard about it, I wasn't around, just going back through music history. It's kind of like, what you're saying is what I'm pretty sure a lot of other people took away from it as well. I mean, it was a life changer in a sense, but also it was a motivator too, right?
It absolutely was. It energized a whole generation. It energized Haight-Ashbury, Flower Power, the Summer of Love, the Diggers. I mean, it energized all of those people and invigorated. I mean, people came from all over the world to see what Haight-Ashbury was. They came from everywhere. And the Dead and the Airplane lived there. The Fillmore Auditorium, which only held 3,500 people, became the cultural center of music in America. And I mean, just to give you an analogy, okay? So now it's 1987, and Easy plays me Straight Outta Compton, plays me Boys in the Hood, and I'm faced with this incredible marketing challenge of a group called Niggas with Attitudes, man.
Right.
I mean, how do you think white middle-class America felt about that, huh? So I'm thinking to myself, I said, you know something, man? This is a combination of the Stones and Gil Scott-Heron and the Black Panthers all rolled into one. For the first time in America, it's going to tell middle-class America the angst of our inner cities and what it's like. It's not going to espouse it like all the critics of early gangster rap, would like to say, oh, man, they're talking about bitches and hoes. And hey, man, they're not saying that's what you should do. What they're saying is, hey, where we grew up, this is our reality.
Absolutely.
This isn't what we're telling you to do. We're just telling you what the fuck it's like. Okay, this is our like. This is our life where we grew up. I remember the first time Easy, took me down to Compton and taught me how to drive in Compton, man. He said, okay, now.
Oh my gosh.
When they see you, if you're driving down in your nice car, man, and a guy lays down on, in the street in front of you, just floor your car. You can't stop, man. Don't ever, I picked up one of his girlfriends at the airport, and we're driving back to his mother's house in Compton, and I go to pull in the driveway. He says, don't ever pull in a driveway here. He says, you can't do that, man. They block you in that driveway, and then it's all over. So he taught me about the reality of what his life was like, and it was an eye-opener for me, although I got to tell you that I grew up on the same block in Cleveland, Ohio that Bone Thugs and Harmony did. I carried a gun when I was 11 years old, and, I grew up in a very, very hardcore, tough place.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this was like, nothing that I had experienced in a long, long time, because, see, rock and roll wasn't like this. Rock and roll was about drugs. Look, the road manager of the Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane, this guy Owsley, Augustus Owsley III, from a 17-mile drive in Monterey, from a rich family. Mm-hmm. I mean, this guy was the chemist that really invented LSD.
Right.
Okay, so on October 6, 1966, when they outlawed LSD and made it illegal, he just changed the chemical formula and manufactured, and then kept changing the window pane, the orange lightning, whatever. He just kept changing it and kept changing, adapting the drug to get around the laws of...
to get around.
Right. So now to give you an analogy, I'm going to finish up on Otis Redding for a second, So he blew everybody away at Monterey, just like the Who did, and just like Jimi Hendrix did, and just like the Mamas and Papas did. He blew everybody away. Then I talked Bill Graham into playing him at the Fillmore in San Francisco, which he just killed everybody. I mean, killed everybody there. And then, of course, he was in that plane crash and died, Here's this incredible musician from Macon, Georgia, and Muscle Shoals, Alabama, down there, and who had wrote all these great songs. I mean, Otis Redding wrote "Respect" for Aretha Franklin. I mean, one of the greatest songwriters of all time. I mean, his songs are
not too many people knew that either. Not a lot of people. He was a great writer in his time too. Definitely
one of the greatest writers. Wrote "Dock of the Bay," "Respect." I mean, he wrote all these great songs and all that great music that was coming out of Muscle Shoals and Macon, Georgia. So we go now. Now it's 1987, and I'm faced with songs like "Straight Outta Compton," "Crazy Motherfucker Named Ice Cube," and a band called Niggas with Attitudes. Okay, or one that starts off, "What the fuck is up? Who the fuck is he? Coming on the mic is Easy Motherfucking E." Okay? And there's only one station in America with the balls to play that music. And that's a little 5,000 watt station at the top of Alvarado Street in downtown Los Angeles. And the signal was so weak, man, that if you were driving out to the San Fernando Valley, where I was living at that time, sleeping on my mother's couch, you drove out there, you'd get halfway there, you could be listening straight out of Compton, and would go right into, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. You know, the country western station would have a stronger signal, so it would go right over the top of KD, and you would lose it. So now you got these disc jockeys there, man, the Mix Masters, Greg Mack and the Mac Attack, Julio G, Tony G. You get these guys. I say that along with 4 or 5 other factors, here's a station, man, that's the only station in America playing gangster rap. Hey, man, every night when I go to bed, I think about my friends Julio G and Tony G and Greg Mack, and think about the contribution that they made to the music business as we've known it since 1986. And they were probably making, $300 a week,
Right.
These guys are really the unsung heroes of gangster rap, and nobody but me ever gives them any credit at all. And I'm still friends with all of them. I talk to Greg Mack all the time. I talk to Julio G all the time. I talk to Tony G all the time, man. And
and the radio portion of it, Jerry, this Jerry Heller on Outlaw Culture Radio is that was important to the success of NWA. I mean, you had that one place people can be able to listen to, and you know how it was back then. I mean, if a lot of people liked it, it was played again, and it was played again.
See, today radio doesn't mean
again.
Okay, radio means
Absolutely.
Nothing today. Okay, yep. Then it was everything.
Yep.
If you couldn't get airplay, how could you spread your message? How could you spread the word without radio? Well, there were some other factors that were happening then. For the first time ever, cell phones were cheap enough so that everybody started to have one. So you talk to somebody anywhere in the country, and you'd be listening to your car radio, and they'd say, "What's this? What's that you're listening to?" So you had an inexpensive mode of transmitting these thoughts. Also, the malls, for the first time, were becoming the social center of America.
Yep.
Malls and swap meets became the social center of America. So you had this exchange of ideas. Not in churches, not in at baseball games. You had it in the malls, man. Everybody went to the mall, and you had this exchange of music and ideas. Everybody went to the swap meet, and you could buy mixtapes for $3, $4, $5. The Rhodium in Los Angeles, and Steve Yano, and we were selling records to these guys out of the trunks of our cars. And this movement was started as a grassroots movement, and that's why I say that today we've lost that purity. And I blame guys like Jimmy Iovine and guys like that have made this beautiful, pure musical movement into just another part of a business plan, a business model that your stockholders are going to vote on. That isn't. To me, that isn't what gangster rap was about.
Do you feel like this culture is slowly dying? Is it dying a slow death because of exactly what you said, the floundering record companies, the lack of a connection that a lot of people, the storytelling that's no more like it used to be. One thing I always believed in, Jerry, was especially during the early days of hip hop and probably somewhere it kind of lost its way, maybe in the 90s or something like that, late 90s and the 2000s, that the storytelling was perfect. The baton was passed more or less. There was a lot of artists that helped other artists and so on and so forth. And it just seems like now it's a whole different deal. But do you think it's dying a slow death right now?
Yeah, I'm going to give you one short example. The album Straight Outta Compton, which the L.A. Times, not exactly the bastion of liberalism and of the Western world,
right,
called Straight Outta Compton the most important album of the second half of the 20th century, and Sgt. Pepper number 2. And we cut that album for $12,000. We cut Easy Does It for $8,000. So,
wow.
Is rap dead? Yeah, I think it's dead. And I think, and I hate to say this because to me, I've seen them all, man. I've seen Pharrell and the what did he call he and the other guy? What did they call the Neptunes? And I've seen all of these producers come and go. But you want to know something? And this guy is no great friend of mine. Dr. Dre is no great friend of mine. He wrote a diss song about Easy and I called Dre Day,
Right.
He's not my buddy, although we were very close friends for many, many years until Mr. Evil Suge Knight came along. But Dr. Dre did all those great songs for the World Class Wrecking Crew. And remember, the last hit that they had, Turn Out the Lights, the girl that sang, the background singer that sang on there, that sang the lead part on Turn Out the Lights was Michelet. So he did that record. Then he did, he did those World Class Wrecking Crew records. Then he did Straight Outta Compton, Easy Does It, Niggas for Life, 100 Miles and Running. Then we go and he did a record with a guy that I consider probably the best pure rapper that I've ever heard, and that's the DOC. Nobody does it better. He did the Michelet record. Then we move along even after the records that he did for Ruthless, and he did The Chronic, and then he did Eminem, 50 Cent, The Game. I mean, this guy, this isn't like Pharrell, who was a big writer and producer for 2 or 3 years. Now it's 2000. Now it's 2010, and nobody has come close to amassing the kind of body of work that Dr. Dre has done. And like I say, he's not my buddy, I see him on the street, we nod to each other, and that's about it.
But you give credit where credit is due. I mean,
I got to. I mean, his body of work speaks for itself.
Absolutely.
But the thing that really frightens me now, which is the same thing that frightens him, is that they're dropping Detox. Is that what they're going to call it, before Christmas?
Yeah, Detox. Right.
Now I heard the first single, and that's the single that he did with Akon. I mean, give me a fucking break, man. I mean, Dr. Dre needs Akon to. I mean, Dr. Dre did The Chronic. Dr. Dre did Straight Outta Compton. Dr. Dre did 50 Cent. I mean, this guy's the greatest producer of this entire era.
And see, Jerry, that kind of brings me back to what I was saying before, or what we were talking about before, as far as let this culture be sacred. You don't have to have 50 million people on your album for it to be a success, or you come with a story, tell your story, and let the chips fall where they may. And like you said, it's kind of like Dre doesn't really need Akon. It's come on now, you didn't need him before.
I think that this album will either rejuvenate the business, which I think is a remote possibility, or it's going to mark the end, just like Chinese Democracy marked the end of that era for Guns N' Roses after waiting how many, I don't know how many years for that album to come out with that album, which is pathetic, And
you know what? You got a lot of history from that, because that was the same reaction that a lot of people had too with the with the Guns N' Roses. It was like, it's either, and that's funny because, like you said, the body of work from Dre, everything that he's done, and all the collaborations that he was a part of, and it's amazing how this Detox can either, like you said, rejuvenate or crush. One or the other. There's no gray area in this at all, especially nowadays.
I know the next single is with Eminem, so probably it'll be, better. And since he does produce Eminem, that's something that's acceptable to me. But we'll see. I have a feeling that this is going to mark the end of the year. This will be the tombstone of rap as we know it. Now, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction is one of the great albums of all time, 26 million copies. It's the biggest first album in history, unless maybe that Alanis Morissette or something passed it. But, that's a big record. And, I used... for me, I said to myself, because I knew that NWA had the music, there was no question about it in my mind. I recognized that. My challenge became a marketing challenge. How do you market a group called NWA, Niggas with Attitudes? How do you market them to middle-class America, How do you get people in Kansas, Minneapolis, Nebraska, Minnesota? How do you get those people to listen to Straight Outta Compton? And I said to myself, who are the really cutting-edge hip people in America today? And to me, outside of the swap meet kids, I didn't have to worry about the swap meet kids because NWA had those automatically. Okay?
Right.
They owned the swap meets. Okay? But to get the rest of America, I said, what do I have to do? Here's my challenge here. And I said, something, man? Anybody that'll buy a Metallica record, anybody that'll buy a Suicidal Tendencies record, anybody that'll buy a Guns N' Roses record is going to buy an NWA record.
Right.
Okay, so, that's the audience that I shot for. And, who were the guys that were listening to that? The surfers and skateboarders in Huntington Beach.
Right.
The guys with the big boom boxes on the backs of their trucks, man. They're the guys that were listening to those records. And if you look at any video, if you look at any interview that any of those guys did, Slash, Lars, any of those guys did between 87 and 91, you'll see them wearing a Compton hat, or a Straight Outta Compton T-shirt, or a Raiders jacket or whatever. So, obviously, the minute that they said that NWA was cool, it wasn't just me saying they were cool. Then they put their stamp of approval on NWA, and then all their audiences thought, okay, we got to check this out. And once they check it out, that's all you can ask for. Once you get someone to check it out, then the music has to stand on its own.
Absolutely. It's Jerry Heller here on Outlaw Culture Radio. And before I actually start opening the lines up, which there's a lot of people on the line right now, one question that I do have for you is, and to me, I think you said a lot. As far as not just the history itself, but also just, a lot of people, and I had a recent interview with Vinny from Naughty by Nature, and he was like, well, the kids need their era of hip hop. This is their era. Let them have their era, and let them go ahead and embrace what they got going on right now. And my whole deal is this. To me, after thinking about it, and to me, I think, the 80s was an era for us, the 90s was, the 2000s, and so on and so forth. My whole deal is, to me, as long as people keep it honest and keep it real, then I don't have a problem at all. But now, with, like you said, the super big budgets and the people that, claim they have these cars and this jewelry and stuff like that, it's just more fantasy than reality, and I just lost complete touch with that as well. So my whole deal is, do you feel like, especially nowadays, because I feel like, of course, Jerry Heller, wealth of knowledge, do you feel like the not just the rap game, but just in general, there's too many hands in the cookie jar, there's too many rappers, there's too many R&B singers, there's too many of this and that?
Well, I mean, you got to look at the genre itself. First of all, the genre itself is people talking to music. So we're not talking about Marvin Gaye here. We're not talking about Jackie Wilson. We're not talking about the Supremes or the Four Tops or Stevie Wonder or Michael Jackson. We're talking about people talking to music. So that in itself makes the genre accessible to anyone. Mm-hmm. So, while NWA and Public Enemy and groups like that are poets, I've always said that O'Shea was the poet laureate of the rap generation, just like KRS-One. Right. And, Easy used to say that, he conceptualized, Dre musicalized, Cube verbalized, and I financialized, and that was NWA. But you're talking about the people that NWA talked about and Public Enemy talked about. They were talking about it from a third-person point of view because, when crack came to our inner cities, when these guys like Freeway Rick and Ricardo Crockett and all these guys brought crack to our inner cities and the Iran-Contra and all that foolishness. These guys were 11 years old, 12 years old, 13. Right. Easy was 13 years old. So obviously they were too young to have been a part of that. But so now they're talking about it. They're the audio documentarians of that era. So along comes Suge Knight, and all of a sudden the people that we're talking about, the perpetrators, became the rappers. Anybody that had a couple of bucks from banging or dealing or however they got it, anybody that did that could now be in the music business because it didn't cost anything to make a record, a couple $100, and nobody was playing the records anyhow, so you didn't have to use the traditional avenues of breaking a record that Elton John did or the Rolling Stones did or Journey or Styx or REO Speedwagon or Van Morrison or Marvin Gaye or people like that. So it's accessible to everybody. And like I say, the people that NWA and Public Enemy talked about now became the rappers.
Right.
So you have the perpetrators becoming the rappers. And, obviously it became oversaturated with what I think is inferior music.
Right, agreed. Outlaw Culture Radio. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the lines right now. If you guys want to talk to Mr. Heller, we're gonna open up the lines. So I'm gonna go ahead and start. 347-215-8653 is the number. Press 1 and go. And we definitely want to say what's up to Mr. DJ Vito V. Vito, welcome to Outlaw Culture Radio with myself and Jerry Heller. What's up?
Hey, what's up, guys, man? Hey, what's up, Jerry? How you doing tonight?
Hey, Vito, how are you, man?
Oh, pretty good, man. I'm glad you're here with us on Outlaw Culture Radio, man. This is a fine Friday, and I got a couple good questions for you, man.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay, well, Jerry, I know you wrote the book Ruthless, a memoir, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, what inspired you to do a book of such magnitude, and where can we purchase your book?
Okay, that's a funny question. I love to answer it. One day I walked into Barnes & Noble, and historically in Barnes & Noble, if you wanted to buy a music book, there's a little section way in the back of the store, where you had to get down, you had to get down to your hands and knees, to see the titles. So I walk into Barnes & Noble, man, and there's Jeff Chang's book on the front table. So I buy this 800-page book, man, and I go home and read it in one sitting, okay? I mean, I just couldn't put it down. So that's on the front table of Barnes & Noble. Also, we got, the 20 biggest disc records of all time listed by XXL Magazine, who have always been an enemy to me. They've never said anything nice about me in their lives, so... Of the 20 biggest disc records of all time, 6 of them are about me.
Wow.
Okay, so I said, okay, man, here's a chance for me to establish Eazy-E's legacy, reconstruct my own reputation, and have it at the front table of Barnes & Noble. So I got Simon & Schuster, the second biggest book publisher in the world, to put it out, and made it mainstream where anyone could buy it. I got them to discount it, so that it was so that everybody could buy it, and you can still get it on Amazon, which is really the place to get it.
Absolutely.
So that's what motivated me to write that book. And of all the books I've ever seen in the music business, mine is certainly the most fun, and it's the most honest. And that's why on the back of it you see all those quotes. You see a quote from Irving Azoff. You see a quote from who's the most important guy in the music business, obviously. He's the chairman of the board of Ticketmaster, Live Nation, and Frontline Management. I mean, there's nobody more important than Irving Azoff. And, in 1970, when he was a freshman at college, he wrote me a letter saying he wanted to be in the music business. I called him, I hired him, and flew him to California, and he lived in my house and became the superstar. I mean, he's managed the Eagles since 1973. So, it's just those quotes on the back. I asked Ice-T for a quote, okay? So he said, I met Jerry Heller and I just didn't trust him. So okay, man, if anyone's going to believe my, hey, that's my dogs, man.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. Can you hear him? I mean, is that? Hey.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
So I said, if anyone's going to believe this book, because I'm going to tell the truth about Dre and Cube. I said, if anyone's going to believe this book, I can't just put the good things on the back. So I put that on the back too. I put on the back that quote from will.i.am. will.i.am, I signed him at Ruthless when he was 16 years old. He had a group called the At-Band Clan, A Tribe Beyond a Nation. He did a video for $1,000 that is one of the best videos to this day I've ever seen. And he could dance better than anyone could dance. He could write better than anyone. I mean, this guy's the most talented guy I ever met, okay? And is still a friend of mine, right down to this day. He's a good friend of mine. He calls my wife and I to wish us well on the Jewish holidays, and he's just a good guy, and he's an incredible star. Well, he put down without Jerry Heller, I got to thank him. I never would have learned about the business. He taught me how to protect myself, this and that. So I wrote good things and bad things, and then there was a quote I put down there. Jerry Heller is one of the brightest guys I've ever met, and of course that quote was from Jerry Heller. So I just put things on the back. The only quote I didn't put on was from Dennis Hopper. I asked Dennis Hopper for a quote. I didn't care if it was good or bad, but he wrote, Jerry Heller is a hard worker and a fast talker. And I said to him, Dennis, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. I said, you're the guy that did Easy Rider. I mean, call me a motherfucker. I mean, say whatever you want, man. But this quote is just stupid. So he said, well, I thought about it, and that's what I want to go with. And I said, fine, I'm not putting on the book. He said, you promised me. I said, well, I lied, man. I'm not putting on the book because it's just stupid and it's going to make you look stupid. And, of course, Dennis has passed away and was really of my generation. I mean, Dennis Hopper, Easy Rider. I mean, give me a break. He was the man. So, I know that, I went around in circles for you, but that's the answer to your question.
Okay, what was your other one, Vito?
Man, this was I definitely feel what you're saying, and the whole show I've been listening, and I think the listeners really feel what you're saying about hip-hop and the state of it and what's going to happen in the future. Okay, what have you been doing with your time nowadays, and what's on tap, for your future endeavors? Okay, so I teach college at UCLA, which is very rewarding, and it's a lot of hard work. I don't teach every semester, but I do teach, and I especially enjoy the class called The Hip Hop Nation from Kingston to Compton. And I'm trying to make the book into a movie, which is a lot of work because I don't own the music, and
right.
So it's been a little
challenging for me, to say the least, to try and put this project together. I'm involved in a Latino musical movement in South Florida.
That's what's up.
That I think is that the purity and integrity are still there. A guy named James De La Raza, and there's we're doing a project called SPIC, Spanish Poets in Control, man, SPIC, and the first album is going to be called The United Snakes of America, and if you look on the back of a dollar bill, you'll see where that comes from. And I think that this project will do for the Latino world what NWA did for gangster rap.
Wow. Definitely. That was good. Vito, good looking out for the question. Let me go ahead and take Eric E. Notes.
Yes.
Welcome to Outlaw Culture Radio E.
What's going on, everybody? Hey, Jerry, how you doing, man?
Okay, bud.
Hey, listen, as well as Vito was saying, you definitely spoke, and you definitely reached every listener out on the line, especially me. I'm definitely staying focused on what you were saying. I gotta say, I do respect your character, and definitely how your outlook is on everything, especially the whole past of NWA and the whole business world and every name that you mentioned, because a lot of it's brand new, a lot of it's new to me, especially because obviously when you're dealing in that business, you deal with a lot of people, and you definitely learn and you grow in this business, and I can't agree with you more about the feeling and the structure of real hip-hop music, and especially kicking it off with the gangster rap and how NWA did. The description you broke down about record just naturally and just very simply popping in a cassette tape in the tape deck and just letting your heart go and just rhyming what you're feeling. I don't think anybody can relate more to music than simple acts like that. Putting all the time and the effort into it and trying to commercialize it, and when money gets involved, shit changes, and it adds a lot of more. It gives a little edge to music, and it's just sometimes you really don't need that shit, and you just need the fucking pure material and the pure feeling on it, and just to make real music. And to be real, I just want to say I really respect everything that you have done and everything you have contributed to the game, and as far as your outlook on the game and hip hop dying and stuff, and it's dying down, and definitely I agree a lot about Dre and what you're saying about producers like Dr. Dre that's been maintaining for all these years and putting out solid stuff, and brand like when you mentioned about having so many varieties of producers out there. It's a real big mix-up. It's really it's hard to tell what's really solid and concrete and what's just, pieces. People, a broken up ground that you're just trying to find the right pieces, like a puzzle. You know what I mean?
I appreciate everything you're saying, my brother, but is there a question there?
Oh, is there a question here? Not really. Vito pretty much asked anything I would have asked if there's any future works that you're doing on, but it definitely respect your grind in school and stuff like that, and teaching.
Thanks, man. I do appreciate that.
Most definitely.
Definitely. Stay right there. E-Knows, appreciate it. Outlaw Coach Radio. Let me go ahead and take another one real quick from Miss Love. Miss Love, welcome to the OCR with Jerry Heller.
Hello, fam. I don't have a question. Somebody else have a question. Is that okay?
Absolutely,
sure.
Absolutely. But you listening? How you liking it? You liking the knowledge Mr. Heller's giving off, though, right?
Yeah, ain't no doubt. I wanted to ask you, how does it feel to be a part of the first movement of gangster rap as far as Eazy-E in itself, and what did it take to want to push it out there?
I've been involved in every major musical movement since the 60s, rock and roll, new wave, punk, R&B. I've been involved in all those movements. There's no satisfaction that I've ever gotten in my life like being involved with my partner, Eazy-E, from March 3rd, 1987, which is the day that I met him, until the day he died, March 26th of 1995. It was incredibly rewarding. It was a lot of fun. And once it started to happen, it happened so fast that none of us could even believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I believe that.
Understand, man. I mean, you know, we were interfacing with Minister Farrakhan, Jesse Jackson, Dick Griffey, Don King, President Bush, I mean, the FBI, MTV, all the major record companies. I mean, you know, we were at every level of society. 3 months into Ruthless Records, Elle magazine, ELLE, which is the foreign equivalent of Vogue magazine, which is a fashion magazine, had a 10-page spread called Gangster Chic, man. I mean, the things that we were able to accomplish were just mind-boggling to me. And the fact that I was able to do it with my son, Eazy-E, and the other guys in the group was just very rewarding to me. And all the time I have, these older women coming up to me on the street and saying, if it wasn't for you, my son would have been a drug dealer, and, you gave people an alternative, and you guys were great, and, all those kind of things. So it really was an ego-building kind of experience, and probably the most important 8 years of my life.
Do you feel nowadays, Jerry, that especially in the hip hop community and just the hip hop culture in general, do you feel like Eazy's legacy is being held up under a good light, so to speak? I mean, because a lot of people mention the Tupacs, a lot of people mention the Biggies and so on and so forth. But do you feel like Eazy's legacy, is that still intact as a good one?
I think I've helped reestablish his legacy. The problem is that Tupac had a body of work that he left behind of unreleased songs done by Johnny J and producers like that. And Jimmy Iovine and Universal were able to exploit, those unreleased masters. When Eazy died and his estate went to some other people, and I had no control over what happened after his death, I don't think that he has been exploited, in the way that he deserved. I think, to me, Eazy-E, along with Berry Gordy and Clive Davis and David Geffen and a half a dozen other guys like that, Eazy-E was one of the most important visionaries of the musical movement during my lifetime. And I will always treasure and feel grateful and lucky, to have spent that 8 years with him, bringing ruthless music to the world.
I agree. I've always thought that about Eazy, as far as what he was able to bring, to the table, not just from urban kids like myself that grew up living, not living that lifestyle, but being around that lifestyle. And to me, he just brought it full circle. Well, you guys did, of course, but, I'm saying, for it to be exactly like you said, Jerry, like poets coming out, like, I understand that because I saw that right down the street, or I saw that a block and a half away. So it made perfect sense. And to me, I think that's something that I feel personally, Jerry, like, there needs to be, the day of his passing or his birthday or something, like, something in the hip-hop community needs to be done more to honor this man's legacy and stuff like that, too, on a lot of different occasions.
Remember that the guys that you're looking at now that are the icons of the music world.
I forgot.
Jay-Z, Puff Daddy.
Right.
I mean, these guys were, Puff Daddy was a junior A&R guy at Uptown Records, when Ruthless was really in its heyday. So, I mean, he paved the way for, all these guys that have made fortunes in merchandising and
absolutely,
and other things other than music, that are music related. He paved the way for that, and Boys in the Hood was the first important, inner city black movie. Before that, there was a saying in Hollywood that that a black movie couldn't do over $35 million. Well, of course, Boys in the Hood, and
surpassed that, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. I'm going to take one more.
I give John Singleton credit for that.
Absolutely. I'm going to take one more call. I'm going to take this one from Cuz from the Lou. Welcome to Outlaw Culture Radio with Jerry Heller.
Hey, appreciate it. It's an honor and a pleasure to speak to you, Jerry.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. One question is, since you've been around, you're one of the unsung heroes in the business, and you deserve a lot of credit. Since you've been in the hip-hop culture for so long, who is the best rapper that you heard or in your, in your lifetime that you like? And also, with Tupac, did you ever meet him, or if you have, what was your thoughts of him?
Okay, so number one, for me, the greatest pure rapper that ever lived was the D.O.C. There was nobody like him. Nobody could flow. Like he could flow, and with Dre's beats, I mean,
right.
Unbelievable rapper. And then he got in that accent, of course, and couldn't really speak after that. But
quiet, hey, Doug, hey.
So, and the second part of your question, what was the second part of your question?
Just the Outlaw Culture about Tupac. Did you ever get a chance to meet him?
Yeah.
If you have, what was your thoughts of him?
Tupac was managed by a friend of mine from Berkeley named Atron Gregory, who has TNT Records up there and managed Digital Underground. Tupac was a dancer with Digital Underground and was a very close friend of Eazy's and myself. So, the rappers that we really respected up there, we loved Too Short, and we loved Tupac. I think Tupac was different from the NWA guys in the respect that, both his parents were Panthers, man. So he came from his rage. That rage inside of him was legitimate. He wasn't making that up. That's what he grew up with. That's what he felt. That's what he believed. And he was a great poet. He was an incredible, charismatic figure. I had lunch with him. I was wandering through the Century City Mall maybe 2 weeks before he was murdered. And I was wandering through the mall, and he was sitting having lunch with some girl. He said, "Hey, Jerry," we sat down, and we talked for a couple hours. He was an incredibly gifted, believe it or not, gentle, bright, nice kid. Atron Gregory is one of the really best managers of all time. I think he still, lives up there in Berkeley or whatever. And, I just thought Tupac was really something special.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, it's of course, the good die young. I mean, he was taken away from us Too Short, Easy, as well as a lot of different people. And, the legacy that they're leaving or they have left behind, I mean, to me, it's, it's going to carry on for, for centuries and centuries, I feel personally. And also, like everybody has said more or less on these lines, your contribution, Jerry, is tremendous. And, like I said, the book, people definitely need to go to Amazon.com right now to go pick it up. Ruthless, a memoir by Jerry Heller. And also, just thank you. Just thank you. I mean, and I've, like I said, it's, reaching out to you has always been a privilege to me. And I just hope I can continue, not just through the holidays in 2011 and for years and years, that I can be able to borrow your ear and just kind of either tell you some different things and stuff like that. But I always pay attention when I listen to you speak, because you do have a ton of history, not just hip hop history, but also every other genre that people can think of. This man has said it and done it all, and I definitely appreciate it, Jerry, from not just from a media standpoint, but also a personal standpoint. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me say one thing before I go, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I say this, that my phone lines are always open to you, okay?
Thank you.
Because the future of our business is depending on young guys like you who are on the Internet, You know, because the traditional areas of communication are a thing of the past. It's
right.
guys like you that have to carry the banner. And I say this on behalf of my partner, the little big man, Eazy-E, and Jerry Heller. I thank you, because it's you that we have to count on to carry the torch from now on. And I say thank you and good night.
Well, you know what? We need each other at the end of the day, and definitely, I will definitely reach out to you. And people, go get the book.
Nexxlegacy.